أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
ألم تر إلى الذي حاج إبراهيم في ربه أن آتاه الله الملك إذ قال إبراهيم ربي الذي يحيي ويميت قال أنا أحيي وأميت قال إبراهيم فإن الله يأتي بالشمس من المشرق فأت بها من المغرب فبهت الذي كفر والله لا يهدي القوم الظالمين.
Dear brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. In this month of Ramadan, a lot of us will be reading and reciting the Quran more than any other time. And that's the reason today, inshallah, I will mention a few things that everyone should know regarding the Isti'aatha and the Basmalah. What is the Isti'aatha and what is the Basmalah? The Isti'aatha is a nickname for A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. And the Basmalah is Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It's a nickname for Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. As we know, every time we recite the Quran, we have to recite the Isti'aatha. Allah Ta'ala mentioned more than once in the Quran, فَإِذَا قَرَأْتَ الْقُرْآنَ فَاسْتَعِذْ بِاللَّهِ. If you recite the Quran, then seek refuge in Allah. As for the format of the Isti'aatha, there is more than one format. The most popular one is undoubtedly A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim. There is also other formats which are longer, such as A'udhu billahi as-sami'il alim minash shaitanir rajim, for example. So every time I recite the Quran, whether it is in Salah or outside of the Salah, I have to recite the Isti'aatha. As for the Basmalah, I would recite it at the beginning of the surah. Each surah in the Quran has the Basmalah at the beginning, except Surah At-Tawbah or Surah Bara'ah. It has more than one name, Surah number 9, which does not start with the Basmalah. If I would recite from the middle of the surah, anywhere from within the surah, then I have the option to either recite the Basmalah or not. The scholars differed whether the Basmalah is part of the surah or not. As for the Al-Fatiha, in Surah Al-Fatiha, many scholars, they are of the opinion that it is part of the surah. Those who say that it is part of the surah, that means that if I recite it in Salah, I have to recite the Basmalah. If I don't recite the Basmalah, that means I did not read Surah Al-Fatiha completely. And those who say that it is not part of Surah Al-Fatiha, the consequence of that is that if I forget to recite the Basmalah while in Salah, in Surah Al-Fatiha, my Salat is still valid. However, the scholars, all of them agree that Surah Al-Fatiha has 7 ayat. Whether they believe that the Basmalah is part of the surah or not, they all agree that the Surah Al-Fatiha has 7 ayat. So if we count how many basmalas are in the Quran, we find that the number of surah in the Quran is 114. So if we have a basmala at the beginning of each surah except one, we'll end up with 113 basmala. Except that in one of the surah, Surah Al-Naml, which is surah number 27, we have one extra basmala in the middle within the surah. So that makes the number of basmalas in the whole Quran 114, which is equal to the number of surah in the Quran. Now, how do we recite the Isti'aatha and the Basmalah? There's 4 ways of reciting Surah Al-Isti'aatha and the Basmalah, whether it is at the beginning of the surah or if I'm going from one surah to another. For example, if I'm reciting from the beginning of Surah Al-Fatiha, there are 4 options that I have. Either I would recite the Isti'aatha and stop, and then the Basmalah, and I stop, and then I begin with the beginning of the surah like this. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. That's the first option. The second option is for me to connect all 3 like this. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. That is the second option. The third option is for me to recite the Isti'aatha and then stop and connect the Basmalah with the beginning of the surah like this. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. The fourth option is to connect the Isti'aatha with the Basmalah and then stop and then recite the beginning of the surah like this. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين. That is the scenario when I'm reciting from the beginning of the surah. Now, what about if I'm ending a surah and going into another surah? In this case, let's do the same thing as we did for the Fatiha. We are not going to recite the Isti'aatha because we have already started, but we're going to recite the last ayah of the first surah. In this case, let's take Surah Al-Falaq and we recite the Basmalah, and then we start the first ayah of Surah Al-Nas. In the first case, I stop at each one of them. So I would say ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس. That is the first option. The second option is to connect all of them. ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس. And the third option is to stop after I finish the first part and then connect the Basmalah to the first ayah like this. ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم قل أعوذ برب الناس. As for the last option, in this case, if I'm reciting the end of a surah and continuing on into a new surah, then the fourth option is not allowed, which means that I cannot recite the last ayah like I did just now, قل أعوذ برب الفلق, Surah Al-Falaq, and then connect it to Al-Basmalah and then stop.